Well, getting a little bit more tactical, so as planners are kind of thinking through, the hybrid event and knowing that production is a big part of it. And as production, experts, if you were to sit down with a client, with a planner or your client, and you're trying to get an understanding of what it is that they're wanting to do with hybrid, what are some things that we should encourage our audience to bring to that conversation? What are some things that they should be thinking through and coming prepared to discuss with us so that we can be smarter on our side and really understand what are the right solutions for them and how to approach it? Any thoughts on this?
I'll jump in here because I'm kind of being a consultant strategist and coming from the association background and producing myself. Having good production teams and tech teams are invaluable. Like I would never do an event without working with a really solid team. They're the rock stars. But as somebody who produces it, you need to empower them to it's really a relationship. It's a collaboration. And, different production companies, I'm sure you guys both work with many, many different events and different teams, different corporations, and everyone has a different thing they bring to the table, a different way they see things. So I would start with the right people, bringing them together, both internal and external. If we have a couple different production, a couple different tech teams or the platform and the AV team, you want to have the right people in the right room and you want to have a couple touch points. So that would be my starting point. Good questions. Write down your questions. We're all doing this together. So really write down the questions to bring to be thoughtful for when you do have those meetings, and really give the opportunity. And I think this is even more important. Give the opportunity for others to ask questions, especially the tech teams. You get really, really techy on things, and you want to make sure that, especially as so many of the teams are now collaborating and working together, working at different centers, they have to plan what equipment they bring, and how different things hook together, or different streams, or it gets really, really techy. And so you want to make sure that the different teams are asking each other the right questions. And then the final thing I would say is a metrics, like a program. I call them program metrics, but this is what it's going to look like. So you kind of have your vision of what it's going to look like, right? This is our event, this is our audience. But what I have found, the production team, and I work with my clients all the time. Okay, let's get this on one sheet of paper, after we model it and look what it's going to look like. Once you give that, that's going to help the production team be able to look at the staffing, the logistics, from a tech standpoint, conflicts. So it really opens up your opportunities and your risks. But without having that metrics, you could have many, many conversations and people are going to be thinking different things, or they're not going to have the right information. So that would be my starting point. But as much as we can communicate and share and write things on paper, on computer or wherever, that will flag those. And I've seen this many times. That flags, someone to say, "Oh, can you explain this a little bit more?" Because from working so many different events, you're taking your last experience with your last client, which could be different from your current experience. So those would be the things that I would start with from a tactical standpoint. I don't know what you guys feel like from the other side, but
Great stuff. Go ahead, Laurel.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that's been interesting in this pivot to virtual and now into hybrid is that it's uncharted territory again. And so it's okay and normal to not know exactly. But occasionally we get clients that come with a blank sheet of paper, and we're not the right people to fill in the blank sheet of paper. We can help you build out your sheet of paper and come up with really creative ideas to make the backbone of what you want to do even better. But we can't help you figure out, what's the overall objective of your event? What is the overall audience looking to see? Those kind of things. And so what I recommend to folks wanting to talk with us is have an idea of what kind of audiences you have, and I would even expand that to your speakers. So we need to know as a production team, like, is your keynote presenter in Los Angeles and your event is in New York? We need to know that. That's going to materially impact what we're about to do. Is it live? Is it recorded? Do they have their own crew? All of those things. So knowing what audiences you probably have an in-person audience, a virtual audience, and then what I like to call a remote in-person audience member, who's somebody who's on site but wants to consume content through live stream. And so then thinking through how each of those groups are going to be able to get that content. And then having a draft agenda, run of show is better, but let's start with an agenda. We could just go through and say, okay, you have this speaker. Are they going to be at the conference hall, or are they going to be remote? How are the attendees going to interact? What do you expect for your virtual audience? And then we can help you build it from there. I know it's always scary to tell us your budget. It's like the used car salesman, right? Like, if you tell me it's $10,000, I'm in at $99.99. But it helps us to know, like, hey, we're not going to recommend you should do this like the Super Bowl if you only have $10,000, because it's not going to be possible. And so we can help you craft and cut out a lot of the back and forth. I think the other thing I'm noticing is because of the uncertainty, we're getting a lot of requests to, hey, can you quote this 4 ways? And it's like, yes, we can, but it's a lot. And so the more you can narrow down what you're looking for, then the better input you're going to get from us.
Yeah, those are great points, Laurel. And I agree with you on the budget piece. I think that's something else that's been a great thing that's come from this past year, is with the advancements of the technologies. There are so many different ways to achieve a similar vision, a similar goal, without spending as much. And so I think that creativity, you should be working with a group who's willing to get creative with you on the budget. If you're working with a group who's telling you it's impossible, then you should do some exploring and talk to more groups, because there's always a way. And I think that it's just a matter of really, to Laurel's point, understanding what your objectives are with the audience and what level of engagement you're looking for. How, like, do you want really high quality, or is your audience comfortable with the Zoom experience? There's a whole array, and you may have multiple experiences throughout an event because of the budget, right? So you might identify something that we've always seen work really well, is to understand what parts of the event really get the most attention. What are those, high impact moments for the event? Invest in that. Just the same way that you would on site. You build out a full keynote room. You do these things because those are the moments that matter to the audience. The same goes for your virtual audience. So, you can get creative with that and find bits and pieces where you can, share costs and push things around. So I think that's a really important part of it. And I think it's something that all of us, including the suppliers, the vendors on the other side, I think everybody's kind of nervous about what this is going to look like from a budget perspective. And we want to make sure that we're able to come in and solve the problems with the budget that's available, but knowing that we're all kind of doing this for the first time. So I think that's a really smart point.